stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. And I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love, love, love. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us.
Thanks for joining us today. My name is Natalie, and I'm one of the pastors here at Clearview Community Church. Okay, confession time. My husband and I are Costco members. It wasn't something we planned for our lives. We were kind of tricked into it. Let me explain. Before we got married, we had each lived in smaller condos, and the need for 72 rolls of toilet paper or a large tub of ketchup just wasn't necessary. After we got married, someone gifted us a Costco membership. We went on our first trip to Costco not really knowing what to expect. We thought we could walk in there and walk out with only the essentials, the items that we really needed. We were young and naive. We thought that we'd keep the spending to under $100, and the shopping trip would get us enough essentials to last us throughout the month. What a joke. Well, if you've ever stepped foot inside a Costco, you already know that walking out of there with less than a $300 bill is next to impossible. There's so many things that they carry, and so many of them are just great deals. We'd buy clothing and body wash, batteries and ground beef, yogurt and Advil. There was just about everything. We love going to Costco. And the best part is treating ourselves to the $1.50 hot dog and drink special afterwards. Because of course, we just shopped so hard. It was easy to convince ourselves that the 5-pack of deodorant was a great deal and wouldn't go bad, or that that bulk box of chocolates was necessary just in case we had surprise guests over. We soon realized that whenever we walked inside a Costco, we spent money on things that we didn't need. Many of these things definitely made our lives easier, but it was just too much. It was getting to be a bit excessive. Have you ever felt this way in your life? Maybe it's not a Costco trip for you, but maybe you've looked at your closet full of clothes and still thought, I have nothing to wear. Or maybe you look around your home and think, if only you had more space or a bigger yard. Or maybe you thought that if you could just upgrade that car or phone or boyfriend or girlfriend, then you'd be happy. You think if only I had more of this or better of that, then I'd have enough. I know this affects all of us. It affects you, it affects me, and sometimes we don't even realize it. There's been times when I've wanted something not because I needed it, but because it'd make my life easier, or I was convinced that it'd be a good purchase. Or to be honest, I simply just wanted it. Back in the day when I was 22, I had just started my career in law enforcement, and I was making more money than I ever had. My bank account had seemingly grown overnight, and I did what a lot of young people do when they start making decent money. I bought myself a new car. It was a 2-door coupe with leather seats, a 3.5-liter V6 engine with a navigation system. This car was so sexy. I loved it. Did I need it? No. Did it add value to my life? No. Was it a smart purchase? Definitely not. So why did I get it? I'm not sure. I think I thought that I had earned it, and I wanted to spend my money on what I want to spend my money on. And it was so sexy. But after a few years, a newer model came out, and suddenly my car didn't seem as nice. I quickly realized that spending money on a car was not the wisest use of my money, and a smaller, more affordable car would be enough for me. But when is enough for you? We each have our threshold. I think we each have this subconscious limit in our mind of when we will stop adding more stuff to our lives. For some of us, that threshold is low, while for others, it appears virtually limitless. Have you ever looked at something that you bought and cringed at the thought of how much you spent on it? Or maybe it's several things that you've accumulated over the years and thought, how on earth did it ever get this far? Have you ever placed your happiness or self-worth or character in the things you've acquired? I think many of us have. The good news is that if you've ever felt that way, you're in good company. Today, we're continuing our sermon series on characters of the Bible. And for tonight's message, we're going to be talking about a Bible character from the Old Testament who just couldn't get enough. His name was Solomon. Now, Solomon was the third king of Israel after King Saul and King David. And his story is told primarily in 1 Kings. He's a son of King David and Bathsheba and comes to the scene around 990 BC. He ruled Israel for 40 years, much like his father, and ushered in an era of peace and prosperity for the nation. Solomon is also known for having unprecedented wisdom. He wrote several books of the Bible, which we now in the Old Testament, including Song of Songs, the book of Ecclesiastes, and the book of Proverbs. Now, Solomon's journey to the throne wasn't a direct line. Solomon wasn't the oldest son, and he wasn't next in line to the throne. But his father, King David, had heard from God that Solomon was to be the next king. And so from his deathbed, King David made Solomon the next king of Israel. While the exact age of Solomon is unknown, commentaries agree that he succeeded his father to the throne between the ages of 12 and 18. That's pretty young if you ask me. I mean, what were you doing at that age? I bet it wasn't ruling a whole nation. Solomon quickly settled into his position and began to lead the nation. We're told in 1 Kings 3 that Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the instructions given to him by his father David. These instructions were to be strong, act like a man, observe what the Lord requires, walk in obedience to him, keep his decrees and commands, his laws and regulations as written in the law of Moses. At the beginning of his reign, Solomon loved God and was committed to walking in obedience as the king of Israel. In a dream one evening, God appeared to Solomon and said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Can you imagine? Think about it. If God asked you right now what you wanted, what would you say? It's so easy to ask for tangible things, to fall back on things that we think will make us happy or make our lives easier, things that will benefit us. But Solomon was different. Instead of asking for wealth or power, he asks for wisdom and discernment. And God is so pleased with his response that he gives him wisdom along with wealth and power. And God, being God, he fulfilled his promise beyond anyone's expectations. During his life, Solomon became famous for his wisdom. Chapter 4 tells us that God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East, greater than all the people of Egypt. He was wiser than anyone else, and his fame spread to all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. He spoke about plant life, about animals and birds, reptiles and fish. From all nations of people came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom. Solomon was the guy to be. He was a poet, he was an author, he was a botanist, and a zoologist. Solomon also acquired great monetary wealth, and there were said to be no kings in all the earth who can compare to him. Solomon was said to have received 666 talents of gold yearly, which is equivalent to over $281 billion. His value today is estimated to be at over $2 trillion. That's more than if you took the wealth of Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Warren Buffett combined. Said differently, $2 trillion could buy 83 billion cars, 3.3 billion homes at $600,000 each, and pay for 33 million teachers' salaries. Oh, and if that wasn't enough riches, an accumulation of stuff, Solomon goes on to marry 700 women, but wait, there's more. He also had 300 concubines or mistresses. I'm guessing Solomon didn't wake up thinking that today was going to be the day he was going to have multiple wives. But each day, Solomon made decisions and continued to accumulate everything under the sun. But when was enough going to be enough? Even though Solomon had all the power and women and wealth, he still wasn't happy. While we can read 1 Kings and get a glimpse of Solomon's life as it was playing out to others, in the book of Ecclesiastes, the book that Solomon wrote, we're invited into Solomon's deep anguish of what life had become. Solomon seemed to have it all, but it wasn't satisfying him. In Ecclesiastes 2, Solomon writes, "After much thought, I decided to cheer myself up with wine, and while still seeking wisdom, I clutched at foolishness." Solomon continues on and writes that he had also tried to find meaning in building huge homes and planting beautiful vineyards, by making gardens and parks and filling them with all kinds of fruit trees. He owned large herds and flocks, more than any other king before him. He collected great sums of silver and gold. He had amazing singers, both men and women, and he had many beautiful concubines. He writes, "I had everything a man could desire. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure." He had acquired so much for himself, but enough wasn't enough. And it's easy for us to judge Solomon thinking, well, I'm not like him. I don't have tons of wealth or power. We judge him, but in reality, many of us face the same struggle to a degree. An American study from the National Association of Home Builders reported that the size of homes since the 1950s has more than doubled from 1950 to 2006. In the 50s, the average size of a home was 983 square feet. By the 70s, it was 1,500 square feet. By the 90s, it was 1,900 square feet. And the latest number for 2020 is around 2,400 square feet. While this is an American study, Canadian reports indicate that we're only third behind America and Australia. We like our space, we like our stuff, we like our amenities. Did you know that 81% of people now own a smartphone? And since at least 2006, there's been more TVs in homes than people. Now, before you jump to the wrong conclusion, I'm not saying that Christians can't own a phone or purchase a nice home. Jesus didn't command us to only buy one pair of shorts or have one shirt or not wear any nice jewelry. That's not what I'm saying. But the reality is, we too live in an age of consumption. It just looks a bit different. In Solomon's case, it became his focus. His motivated shifted from pleasing God and obeying his commands to doing what was right in his own eyes and the eyes of others. The decline of Solomon didn't happen overnight. He slowly deprioritized his relationship and commitment to God. The commitment that he made to his father and to God to keep the commands were now a distant memory. If we flip back in the Bible and look at the pages of Deuteronomy, we see clear commands that God gave for all future kings. These laws were for the benefit of the king and of the nation of Israel. And guess what? There were a lot of things that Solomon didn't do according to the laws. God said the king must not acquire a great number of horses for himself or make the people return to Egypt to get more of them. Well, Solomon acquired 12,000 horses, and where did he get them from? You guessed it, Egypt. God said the king must not take many wives or his heart will be led astray. Solomon took on 700 wives and 300 concubines and allowed idol worship. God said the king must not accumulate large amounts of silver and gold. Solomon amassed tons of gold that would have been worth $2 trillion today and taxed the people of Israel heavily as a result. Each of these three areas reflect places where many modern Christians fall: power, pleasure, and wealth. I don't think Solomon went into his position thinking that this would be the outcome. We see that Solomon started from a place of humility and obedience. We know that when given a choice, he first asked for wisdom and discernment. But for Solomon and for us, it's easy to make small concessions and rationalize them to ourselves. Many examples of gross disobedience begin as clever rationalizations. For Solomon, his heart had changed, and despite a second visit from God, he had forgotten who had given him all of these things. By the end of Solomon's reign, and as we read in Ecclesiastes, Solomon became spiritually bankrupt. Enough was never going to be enough. He was never going to be satisfied. The wisdom that had once represented a divine gift from God had become an instrument for self-service. At the end of Solomon's writings in Ecclesiastes, he ends with this: "Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind." After everything that Solomon had attained and experienced, he realized that it was all meaningless without God at the center of it. So where does this leave us? None of us have amassed multiple husbands or wives. None of us are worth $2 trillion, and we don't have thousands of chariots. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, for some of us, our definition of enough is a continuously moving target. It's become a target that we just can't hit. And because our definition of enough remains unachieved, our ability to truly enjoy what God has given us has been diminished. We seem to have this benchmark in our mind of when it will eventually be enough. But ask yourself honestly, is this true? It's good to have goals and accomplishments and dreams and nice things. But if it's replaced your focus on the Creator who gave you all these things, then did you really accomplish anything? We see that Solomon had it all, but in the end, everything that he had accumulated was eventually destroyed. In the end, he discovered that nothing apart from God could make him happy. Do you know what Jesus says? He says that I came so that they may have life and have it abundantly. But this abundant life isn't what our world tells us. This abundant life means it's something more meaningful than material wealth and prosperity and power. This abundant life is one that is rich with the love of God and others and doing God's work to build up the kingdom. Friends, ask yourself this. Are you kingdom-focused or self-focused? Are you storing up treasures for yourself and losing focus on God? Do you ask God for wisdom, or do you create a self-serving wish list? When will enough truly be enough for you? Let me pray with you. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your word, God. Thank you that you've given us pages in history, Lord, that are still applicable today, Lord. I pray that we can search for you, God, that we don't look to the material things of this world, God, but that we know that it's only in you that we can find joy and peace and happiness, God. It's because of you that we have anything in our presence and our midst, God, that you have created it all for us, Lord. And we just pray that we can just steward it all wisely, Lord. Give us wisdom and discernment as you gave King Solomon, God. We thank you for all that you're doing in our community, all that you're doing in our church, God, and everything we have, we just give it all to you, Lord. I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you next week.